And shluchim need to create an interest in people who are basically not interested. You have to dig much deeper than to provide for the market that exists. That's easy. In the early days, Hillel houses were created so that Jewish boys can meet Jewish girls and they'll get married to Jewish. The problem was, who says that Jewish boys want to meet Jewish girls? I mean, those who want, fine. But they already want. How do you get a kid who has no concern? Jew, not Jew, doesn't care. Where do you start an interest there? How do you spark the neshama? Nobody does that. Except shluchim. You walk into a person who's completely cold and you get something started. How do you do that? So it can't be coming from the person. You can't tell the person he needs it, because he really doesn't. He has no guilt, he has no nostalgia. Those days are gone. So the only way is to start milmaila, to say maybe you taka don't want or don't need, but he does. And that just became stronger and stronger, and seeing the reaction, it's powerful.
So you mentioned, if I went back to your recordings from 30 years ago, mid-80s, do you think I would find you saying God needs it as clearly?
Yeah.
I would find it like that.
In fact, I remember one class, it was in the 80s, maybe even earlier, where there was this very intelligent woman, and that whole summer was a real challenge. She was good. She asked all the right questions, and she really forced me to dig deeper and come up with something every day, something new, and we got into this whole discussion about chukim. And I think that was the first time that I was able to word it this way. If you ask the Eibishter why he wants you to separate meat and milk, what will he say? He will say, I don't know. That got their attention. The Eibishter doesn't know. There's something he doesn't know. He knows everything. He knows everything there is to know. There is nothing to know about a chayk. There is no reason. So if he doesn't know the reason, he's not missing anything, because there is no reason. That's him. And of course, Chassidus says that all mitzvahs are chukim. Zeis chukas ha-Torah, the whole Torah is chukim. So it all circles around this one concept of.
Are you surprised by the pushback?
Very. Why would anybody be interested in proving that they're not necessary? Why would anybody do that? Wasn't there negeya to prove and convince yourself that what you do is not negeya? Why would you do that? I mean, even if you had no chassidus telling you that, you would want it. But if you don't want it, what is that? So what? I mean, everything has to have a motivation. What motivates people to argue that the Eibishter does not need it? If you have a kasha, because it sounds like in this maimer, that maimer, Rambam, that the Maisa Tachtenim don't affect him, and so on. Good, so you have a kasha, but you should ask the kasha, not be happy to know that he doesn't need you. I don't understand that.
Well, what I keep on hearing again, you're limiting him
to Torah and mitzvahs. Yes. You're limiting him.
Well, why do you think that? Why do you think that was created? Like what?
Look, everything we say is limiting. When you say he's bli gvul, you're limiting him. You're saying he's ein safe, you're limiting him. You're saying he's kadesh v'neira, oyen v'neira, you're limiting him. And yet we say it anyway. When you say mitzvahs are negeya and atzmos, it is the least limiting thing of all. Much less than saying he's bligvul. Because mitzvahs themselves are him. When you say mitzvahs are bligvul, it's also a limit. It's not true. Mitzvahs are more than bligvul. So if you have a problem with mitzvahs because the Eibishter is bligvul, no, the bligvul is the problem. That's limiting. Mitzvahs are not limiting.
And this conversation I was having, Nimna had noticed, we can't be comfortable with saying he needs and he doesn't need. Like,
that's all benegeya to Maisa Bereshis, to Sviras, Seder Shtalshalas, Midas. It doesn't apply to saying that the Eibishter can't help being an Eibishter. That's not a limit.
So I'm saying Ilu Yitzur, I would do a poll now with Shulchan. I had the accessibility, and I came back to you and I said 90% of them say he does not need, he wants or he chose to need. Would you be surprised by that stat, or would you say?
I've gotten over the surprise. But when people say he chose to need, that's correct. What does that change? Yeah, chose to need.
What's correct about it?
Huh?
What is correct about that?
He did choose to need.
Meaning that he could have not chosen?
No. Generally, when you say need, you're talking about an external, additional pursuit that is separate from the person who is the Baal HaRotzen. Because we assume that every Rotzen is imposed. If I was happy and if I was content with myself, I wouldn't need anything. So if I need, then somebody's bugging me, something's bothering me, something is disturbing me. Otherwise, why would I need? Foolish. So not needing seems to be more like etzem, and needing sounds like somebody else is interfering with you. But what would a rotzen atzmi be? What is a rotzen that doesn't come from outside? Just, that's you. So it's debatable whether you really should call it rotzen at all. Rotzen is like a netiya in the nefesh. Okay, we call it rotzen. Merutza. Not forced. So when we say rotzen, we just mean voluntary. Not optional. There's a difference. Voluntary means from within, volitional, not forced. But not forced doesn't mean optional. I mean, you don't force me to be me, but I gotta be me. So I am me by choice, so to speak. But not that I have an option to be somebody else. Now with me, this whole thing is not true. Because I am not me by choice. The Eibishter created me this way, so I'm this way. So it is imposed on me. There is no real me that is voluntary. But by the Eibishter, since he wasn't created, the real him is not coming from outside, not imposed. So it is willing, or whatever that word is, we can find. So when you say he chose to need, it doesn't imply option. He could have chosen not to. All it means is that his need was not coming from outside, nothing forces him, nothing compels him, it's him, which makes it even more of a need, not less. Makes it more atzmizdik. So like kids ask, you mean if I don't do the mitzvah, he's going to die? He's going to die? No, he's not going to die. Oh, so he doesn't need it. That's so childish. If he needed the mitzvah for some purpose or some shleimus, then he doesn't really need the mitzvah. It's just a means to an end. What we're saying is that the mitzvah is him. So precisely because he won't die if you don't do it, and yet he wants you to do it, that means that it's a ratzon atzmi. Now the question is, and this is the big debate in Chassidus and my mother, is ratzon atzmi a ratzon or it's not a ratzon? It's a good conversation. Discuss it endlessly. Nesava HaKadosh Baruch Hu liyas le'dira b'tachteina. Was it a taiva? Well, can you say the Eibishter had a taiva? No. But it says that the Eibishter had a taiva. So what are you going to do with that? So you say kiviyachol and you go home. That fixed nothing. The Eibishter had a taiva or not? That's how much Tzedek said. The Eibishter had a taiva, and that's our mazel. Because without that taiva, there'd be nothing. So it's a real taiva. No, it's not a taiva. All right, so what word do you want to use? So was there a rotzen? Does he really want the mitzvah? Call it whatever you want. But mitzvahs didn't come out of a book. It came out of him.
But the argument I hear again and again is he can't be lacking anything. So if I understand this correctly, according to what you're saying is if I don't put on tefillin today, now it's 5:30 and it's shkia, he does not have the tefillin. So he is lacking tefillin. But on the other hand, he can't be lacking anything. So how could he absolutely need it? And if he doesn't get it, he's not lacking anything. Like, what would be like the short version to answering that seemingly big dilemma?
Now you're introducing Bechira. That the Eibishter gave us Bechira to do the mitzvah, not to do the mitzvah. So we have to separate the subjects. Is tefillin negeya to the Eibishter in atzmos? Absolutely. Is it negeya in atzmos that you should put on the tefillin? And if it is, why did he give us Bechira? So I think part of the confusion is, you ask, is the mitzvah essential to the Eibishter? And then you answer, no, because he only gave it to us for our benefit. Wait a minute, I didn't ask you why he gave it to you. That's a separate subject. Wait on that. The first thing is, what is a mitzvah? And that's why it makes no sense to say that the Eibishter doesn't need the mitzvah. He's just being mezaki you with the mitzvah. But if he doesn't need it, then it's not mezaki me with anything. So before we get to why he gave us the mitzvah, why he needs us to keep Shabbos, first, what is Shabbos to him? There can't be any doubt, and there can't be any sveike that it's everything. That's him. So if that's him, you can't say it's adding to his shleimus. It's not adding to his shleimus. That's him. Now, what happens when he gives you the mitzvah and you don't do it? So is he now missing something? The answer is, he's missing you. You're not cooperating. You're not miyuchad. You're not makusha. Does that bother him? Absolutely. Is that a chesaron in him? A lack in him? Yeah, the same way that tzimtzum is a lack in him. And if you take tzimtzum kipshute, then the fact that you don't do a mitzvah is a lack in him. But tzimtzum is not kipshute. Afal pi shachata yisraelhu, and sof kol sof le'yidach mimena nidach. So the lack is only benegeya to the nivra. As far as the Eibishter is concerned, you'll put on the tefillin and you'll be afal pi shachata. So the question of adding shleimus to the Eibishter, why and how do we know that the Eibishter is not lacking anything? Well, why is that an ikir in the Emunah? If you open up the Chumash and it says Bereishis Bar Elikin, he's lacking something. Where do you get this thing? He's not lacking anything. Where did Rambam get it from in the Yud Gimel Ikim? How do you know, and why must you believe that he's not lacking anything? I mean, it sounds right, it feels right, but what's like the reason? The simple reason is, if he is the Eibishter, which means nobody created him, so where would a lack come from? A lack only comes from a stronger force that limits you. You can't spread all over the world because I'm taking up space. But if he is the Eibishter, in other words, if he's the original Amitas Himotze, what do you mean he's lacking? A lack is unnatural. It's imposed. Who's imposing it? How do we know that there aren't two Eibishters? If one is good, why two should be even better? How can there be two Eibishters? What limits the first one that leaves room for the second one to begin? So to be two Eibishters means each one is limited. It's not an Eibishter. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the Eibishter's Mitzvahs. You can't say that the Eibishter is lacking in his Mitzvahs, because who would do that to him? So when you say he's already mushlim and he's a shleimus and you can't add any more shleimus, that's talking about existence, Mitzvahs. If this mushlim dike bashefer wants something, what is that, a chassan? If he has an opinion that makes him imperfect, he is perfect and he has an opinion. Why does that take away his perfection? So he is perfect and he has a kavanah. That makes him less perfect. What is it? So yes, if he fulfills the kavanah, it does not make him more perfect. But how would it be better and more perfect if he had no kavanah? Then he's a statue. Zagechke.
So, I'm just back to what you were saying. So if I do the mitzvah, again with the tefillin example, and now it's shkia, and it's 5:30, whatever, the precise minute that it's too late for me to put on tefillin. At that moment, what is upsetting him? That he doesn't have the mitzvah, he doesn't have me, or both?
Well, both. Because the mitzvah is the kesher.
So now he, at 5:30, whatever, he's lacking heat, November, whatever today's date is, and he doesn't get the tefillin now, it's gone, it's too late, you can't do it, halachically not permissible. He didn't get his tefillin from me today. So he is missing the tefillin, he is lacking the tefillin.
Again, there's a difference. If you're saying, is he lacking in his shleimus, in his existence? No, he doesn't exist any less.
His desire. He's lacking in his desire.
How about it?
So is it appropriate to say he's lacking something, and this thing we're calling his tefillin?
Yeah, but here's where we get confused. If he's lacking something, he's not perfect.
Right.
But that's not correct. He is hurt, but he's not any less perfect.
As far as his shleimus in existence goes, which is a lower level. Like if I'm well fed and well slept and I have all the money in the world, now what am I going to do? That's what's important. It's not that the fact that I'm well fed. So that's really like not even part of the conversation in that sense.
So it's important to mention this, that in terms of the Eibishter's Ratzon, since his Ratzon is very powerful, how is it possible that you don't listen to him? That you don't fulfill his Ratzon? And we talked about this when they get to Adam and Chava, but the Rebbe says that eating from the Eitz Hadas was neged haratzon, but it was lefi hakavana. The question is how, since the Eibishter's Ratzon is bli gvul, how can you go against his Ratzon? Why is his Ratzon defective? That a human being can... So you say, well, because he gave us Bechira. But that just makes the mystery bigger. How can we have Bechira when he already has a Ratzon? So if Bechira means, I'm neutral on the subject, you decide what you want to do, okay, that makes sense. But he's not neutral. He says, don't do this. And you can go ahead and do it? Isn't there something defective in his Ratzon? So there's a Ratzon Chitzeni and there's a Ratzon Pnimi. The Ratzon Chitzeni means a Ratzon that comes from outside. I need a car to get downtown. I don't need a car, I need to get downtown. So the Ratzon for the car is a Chitzeni. If I didn't need to go downtown, I wouldn't need the car. So when the Eibishter says Yehi Eir, he doesn't need Eir. He doesn't want Eir. He wants Torah and Mitzvahs. B'shvil Yisrael, b'shvil HaTorah. That's what he wants. The fact that he wants grass and Eir and Shamayim and... That's a Ratzon Chitzeni. Now, a Ratzon Chitzeni, because it is in a sense forced, when it expresses itself, it forces. Ein loch davar ha'emed b'fnei haratzon. It will plow through everything and get what it wants because it has to. If you have that kind of ratzon and people don't listen to you, you're defective. Like parents who demand respect because they desperately need it and they don't get it. Well, they're defective. But then there's Ratzon Pnimi. In other words, the Ratzon for what you really want, not what you need to get to where you want. So you want your kids to be respectful, not because you need respect. You want them to be respectful, because that's where you're supposed to be. That's called a Ratzon Pnimi. Ratzon Pnimi does not feel forced on the Baal HaRatzon. So it doesn't force the recipient of the Ratzon. So the father wants his kids to be a mensch. It has to happen now or I'm defective? No, it has to happen in the child. It's not about me, it's about the child. So if it'll take 20 years, okay, whatever it takes. So the fact that a child can say no is not a contradiction to the Ratzon. That is the Ratzon. The Ratzon is that the kid should grow into a mensch. So if he's not a mensch now, that doesn't mean my Ratzon is defective. I didn't demand it now. I don't need it now. I need a process that makes a mensch out of a behemoth. The same with the Eibishter's Ratzon. The Ratzon for creation, the Ratzon for and maybe even the Sheva Mitzvahs, that's necessary. So if you don't listen, it's not acceptable. So there's no option. Actually, non-Jews do have Bechira, so it's not a good example. But the existence of the world, or even Yiridas HaNeshama Beguf, that's not what Eibishter wants. That's necessary to get to the Kavan. So anybody asks you, you have Bechira of Yiridas HaNeshama Beguf? You don't have Bechira. Because the Eibishter says go, you go. When do you get Bechira? When it comes to Torah and Mitzvahs. Because Torah and Mitzvahs, although we call it Rotzen, but it's a Rotzen Pnimi. So it does not violate the Rotzen, the fact that we're still not what we need to be. It's not going to happen until Bias Mashiach. So again, that's the difference between Rotzen as a Midah, part of say the Shtalshalus, it's Keser, Pnimius HaKeser, Chesenius HaKeser. That you can't impose on the Eibishter. That limit. But a Ratzon Pnimi doesn't come from imperfection. The father who wants his kid to be a mensch is not complete. He's a complete mensch, the father. Not only is he a complete mensch, he's even nice enough and kind enough and whatever to want his kid to be a mensch too. For the kid's sake, not for his sake. So again, the fact that the Eibishter is perfect and yet needs mitzvahs is not a contradiction at all. And that's why Torah and mitzvahs is of a completely different nature, substance. It's not. This is where you go when you're already perfect.
So eventually when the Malard stays Hashem, is this what the topic that we're going to be speaking about the Eibishter and his deeds? It's going to be pretty much what we've spoken about. Do you think this is the discussion?
In Olam Haba, I don't know if there'll be any discussion at all. It's hard to imagine that you're going to feel exactly the way the Eibishter feels about every mitzvah and about it. So what is there to discuss? There's nothing to discuss. So what's it going to be like? Hard to imagine. But in Yemais HaMashiach, that's going to be the discussion. Lo yiyeh esek kol ha'olam elo lo da'as es Hashem.
And this is sort of from left field, but do you think the Rebbe felt a sense of frustration that he was trying to get this point across in numerous mamarim and sichos from every different angles, and here we are, 2015, and most people say, I've never heard of this, or I disagree with this, or this can't be, that God needs your mitzvahs. If the Rebbe was watching this conversation, you think he's frustrated?
Could be. But that's part of the process of Yefutza Meinasecha Chutza. In a very real way, I think every chassid who has learned a maimer or two knows that it's negeya and atzmos. But when you say it in English, you say he needs, everybody freaks out.
Why?
Because the word need, we have an allergic reaction to it. But once they calm down, as you've seen, once they calm down and they think about it, of course.
So you just, what do you define, what's that knee-jerk reaction that just throws them off when they hear need?
Because the first thing that comes to mind is like, oh, you mean like I need to eat? That can't be. Yeah, you're right, that can't be. But need to eat is first of all a need, ratzon chitzoni, because you didn't choose it and you don't want it, you're just stuck with it. And number two, it's not even a ratzon, it's just a handicap. So no matter how much you don't want to eat, you have to. Of course, that doesn't apply to the Eber. So we have to just get over the allergic reaction to the word. But you need the word, because if you can't say it in English, then the mayones have not come to the chutzah. If you can only say it in Hebrew.
And we were saying before, the fact that his will, and it's going to happen, like we were saying, ultimately will happen. It's sort of like, I don't know, taints it a little bit, or reduces the drama. I don't know if that's the right way of saying, like, okay, he's going to get it. It's not, it sort of doesn't make it sound that urgent.
It's true. And that's why we have bechira. But if you think about it, it makes it more urgent. If Sav kol Sav, Save Davar, Hakol Nishmas, Elikim Yidavas, so what are you waiting for? What are you trying to delay the inevitable? So it makes it even more compelling. Because if there's a possibility that we'll never do it and it'll never happen, that weakens it. But if you know, what do you mean? You're going to do it. You have to. This is safe davar, that's what's going to be. So in a mature thinking, it makes it more compelling. Immature thinking is, okay, so I can get away with it. But why would you want to?
It doesn't make you sound like as necessary. Like, okay, it's going to happen.
On the contrary, if there's no way that it cannot happen, that's pretty necessary.
So let's get moving.
But when they get to the Eibishter, to say that because it's going to happen, he doesn't need it as much, that's a contradiction. If it must happen, it shows how much he needs it. But there's no option. Can't be any other way. Why can we have a process to get there? That's what he wants. That is his ratzon. His ratzon is that the tachten should come to that conclusion. So being a tachten is not hepech haratzon. Even ratzon. Certainly not hepech hakavana.
So I'm just, if I have this conversation with, I go to Manhattan or wherever, and I find modern Orthodox rabbis, conservative, and I ask them this question, point blank, does God need? We both would imagine that they would say, of course not, right? And here we're coming to tell them something radical. But if we have the right steps and the right format or whatever is needed to say, look, it's possible for them to shift their opinion.
It's impossible not to. Once they think about it, it's impossible not to. Unless you want to make a joke of the whole Torah and Mitzvahs of our whole history, all our Mesiras Nefesh for nothing. Come on, it's horrible. Horrible. So I think what happened is that Christianity came along and said that the Eibishter isn't a guf. We had a major backlash. Chas v'sholem. No guf, no tzir, no form, nothing until we turned the Eibishter into nothing. He went a little overboard. So we got to calm down. Stop reacting to Christianity already. And turning the Eibishter into Kela Neichi V'loi Ish doesn't mean that I'm not a mensch, less than a mensch. I don't have the limitations or the chesrenes of a human being, but I'm not worse than a human being, not less than a human being. So if a human being can hear, I can't. Haneita ezem ala yishma? What are you saying? You can hear and I can't? You can feel and I can't? You have sensitive feelings and cry over other people's problems. I don't? What did we just do?
When I have these conversations, it always, like, one question goes back, like, okay, look at what's bechira and what's free choice, and what's hashgacha pratis. Like, it keeps on like unearthing so many layers that you have to understand to really understand that. I guess that's why there's so much chassidus, but how do you, like, how does something that seems so radical and counterintuitive, it would take the average person to really understand it a lifetime if they would have to go through all the steps to really understand how everything fits together.
But that shows how fundamental these things are. If you make a shift in something fundamental, everything has to shift. If you understand this better, everything has to take on a deeper meaning. Because we're not talking about a detail, we're talking about ikir and das. You make a tiny shift in a fundamental principle, domino effect. Everything has to upgrade, which is beautiful. And yes, it can take 10 lifetimes. Harucha me'eretz midah. Torah is bligvul.
So knowing this, like, principle, like, there was a book that came out, The Secret of Chabad Success. Is this sort of the real secret of Chabad success? If you had enough conversations, and what's the philosophy behind it? The shluchim come and they have 300 college students. Yeah, but why? What's behind the dedication? Is that we know something that the rest of the world doesn't?
Yes. And it's so simple. I mean, you can call it simple. It's like doing a mitzvah lishma. What's lishma? Do it without thought of a reward. So what am I doing? How does that make sense? So whether you're saying chukim, have no reason. The Eibishter doesn't know why he wants it. Or you don't know why you're doing it. You just do it. Without thought of a reward. What are you doing? So if it's not a rotzen atzmi, then there's no such thing as shaloi lekabel pras. Shaloi amanas lekabel pras. So again, if you make a little shift in how deep the rotzen, or how essential, it's not even deep, how essential the rotzen for mitzvahs are, then your taich of lishma changes radically. Shalei al manas lekabel pras suddenly makes sense. Chukim suddenly makes sense.
Just this last point, so the title for dir b'tachtonim, all of those elements are asmi, are essential, meaning that it has to be in a tachtonim, in a world of hardship and pain and challenges. that is also part of the essential desire, that it has to play out exactly the way that we see it?
It could be that the cheshach, is not lefi haratzon, only lefi hakavana. So there are some distinctions there. Torah and mitzvahs are ratzon and kavana, but here's the danger, and this is a real danger. As long as we don't know that the Eibishter himself is asking you to do this mitzvah, then if you don't do the mitzvah, there's a little wiggle room that allows for that. Because you can always say, I didn't know it was negei and atzmos. So there's room for forgiveness. But what will happen if you tell somebody that this is negeya and atzmos, and he doesn't care? It makes it very hard to forgive. That's the danger. What if a person knows that it's really negeya and atzmos, he doesn't care? He's not impressed. It's almost like the end of the road. Where do you go from there? Because the Rebbe Rashab said, once you know that the negeya and atzmos, meves mit vemen mahotzaton, is gar anders. And if not, then is gar schlecht. That's really bad. So again, the limud zchus would be that no matter how many times I tell you that it's negeya and atzmos, you have no idea what I'm talking about, so you're still a shegig. You can't say that just once you read a sikha, that's it. But if you really did know that it's negeya and atzmos, and you know mit vemen mahotzaton, and you don't do it, I think that's what the story with the diamond from the crown of the king, and it's going to spill, and even that's worth it. So what is it in the nimshal? What's going to spill? If you tell people it's negeya and atzmos, and they don't care, that's spilled. That's painful.
Maybe that's in Lois Mishakela why one of the representatives of my brain could have said that on the same when he cried, possibly, is because people were gonna totally miss the point. I don't know if that's...
I don't know. But that could be why Kabbalah in general resisted public exposure, because what if you tell people and they say, I don't care? That's very painful. So, ein meisrim rozei teira ela lemisha libe deyig bekirbei, meaning you got to know if he's sensitive to this. If he's not sensitive, why are you telling him?